Welcome to Marshland Histories, Series 2 of the Oral History podcast, celebrating the Lower Waveney Valley. In this episode, we're taking a trip through an A to Z of Carlton Colville. We'll uncover the people, places and memories that have shaped village life. It's such a big alphabet, we've split it into two parts. Here's part 1, A to M. A is for Autoshopper. If you grew up in Carlton Colville in the 1970s, chances are you spent plenty of time here. Sitting on the corner of Hall Road and Rushmere Road, it was one of the village's biggest shops, almost a supermarket, perfectly placed between primary and middle school, the ideal stop on the way home for a Mr. Freeze or a bag of jelly tots. The shop had been there since the 1930s as Rushmere Road stores, run for many years by Frank Secret. In the mid-70s, it was modernised, became the Autoshopper, and later reinvented itself as a spa, happy shopper, and one-stop before closing in 1992. Carter's car showroom followed, and in 2012, houses were built on the site. My own connection, my mum, Heather, served behind the counter there for over 30 years, from the 1960s to the 1990s. B is for Bibbler. That's Bibbler Bunn from Low Barn Farm and his once famous farm shop in Mutford, owner of one of the best nicknames in the village. Real name William Charles Boone. I love the fact that no one seems to know why he was called Bibbler, unless you know different. C is for Chip Shop and Charlie. That's Charlie Harris, Second World War veteran, former trawler skipper and long-standing member of the Royal Naval Patrol Service. Charlie ran the fish and chip shop at the bottom of Shore Avenue in the 1970s. Having spent years at sea, Charlie knew how to pick the best fish to fry. Back in the days when a bag of chips cost 5 pence, Clive Baker remembers Charlie introducing the battered sausage to the menu. It was a talk of the village. Sausage and chips? That would have set you back about 10 pence. D is for Dutch tea garden, an unlikely thing to find on the marshes in the 1930s. But there it was, a little tea room on Reed Fen beside Alton Dyke, welcoming holidaymakers arriving by boat, while local families kept it busy too. It remained a popular destination into the early 1950s. Joy West, a lifelong Suffolk Wildlife Trust member, grew up near Carlton Marshes and remembers it well.
Did you know about the Dutch tea gardens? That was owned by Mr. Powell. He knew him as Midge Powell. He was an undertaker in Lowestoft. I've actually got a little picture there, not the little snap you used to take in those days. You can just
lovely.
see the name of it. Walk down there on a Sunday mostly and have a cup of tea and cakes and that, and walk home again. We used to walk quite a way, but then you did in those days. You walked everywhere. That's what you did.
E is for East Anglian Transport Museum, which began in Carlton Colville in 1965 on what was a meadow donated by founder Albert Bird. Opened to the public on the 28th of May 1972 and is now home to a remarkable collection of historic buses, trams, trolley buses and railway vehicles, many still running thanks to generations of volunteers. It's one of the reasons why a walk around the village can sometimes feel like stepping back in time, because every now and then an old double-decker bus comes proudly rumbling past. F is for Forge, which was in the street in Carlton Colville where the village blacksmith worked. On the left, that's William Moyes, around the time he took over the family business from his father in 1901. And on the right is James Doddington, the village wheelwright. And that's a wheelwright stone where cartwheels were rested while they were repaired. And here's William still at work in the forge over 50 years later, aged 79, around 1953. The forge closed not long after, but the wheelwright stone was still there, a remnant from another age, until the bungalows were built in the 1960s. G is for guides and brownies. For many girls, the old church hall on the corner of Chapel Road and Rectory Road meant uniforms, badges, and adventures. Mrs. Lanham led the guides, while Mrs. King was the original brown owl to the village brownies. At the suggestion of Reverend Blythe of St. Peter's Church, she started the pack in 1968 and is fondly remembered for helping the 1970s Carlton girls to do their best, lend a hand, and have fun outdoors. H is for Hedley House, or as many of us knew it, Deadly Hedley. It was actually built as a private house in 1873, and over a century later, in 1974, was bought by Les Moody, who converted the building into a hotel. 3 years later, Andy Willows took over the function rooms, packing them with discos, weddings, and the legendary Grab-a-Granny nights. In 1996, it became Carlton Manor, and today it's known as the Coach House. But to plenty of locals, it will always be Deadly Hedley. Why? Because some nights I'm told there was hardly anyone there, especially when the wherry became the place to go. And also, Deadly Hedley was a really good rhyme. I is for Isolation Hospital. When I was growing up in the 1970s, if you walked a long way down Fairhead Loke, you'd come across a strange old building of timber and rusty corrugated iron. By then, farmer George Solomon used it as a store for hay, and he kept chickens in there too. But my mum knew it as the Old Isolation Hospital, or the Sanatorium. Its official name was the Lowestoft Borough Council Smallpox Hospital. Built in 1893, it had just 12 beds and stood well away from the village in case disease spread. Described as an iron hospital, they were really just corrugated iron with iron frames and timber, and made by Bolton and Paul as flat packs so they could be assembled quickly. And the one in Carlton Colville was still in use in the 1930s. But smallpox had virtually disappeared from Britain after the Second World War, and the hospital closed in 1953. The building eventually burned down in 1982, and today there's nothing to show it was ever there, just the memory of a lonely old shed that once stood guard against one of history's most feared diseases. J is for Jimmy's. That's a newsagent run by James Mitchell, although he didn't mind being called Jim. In the early 1960s, his parents Alec and Joan took over the general stores on the corner of Poplar Road, where Jim began work as a delivery boy in 1962, aged 9. In the mid-60s, the Mitchells also opened a newsagents in the freshly built row of shops in Fermona Road. Jim soon took over the shop as manager and was there for over 50 years, still behind the counter just weeks before his death in 2023 at the age of 76. K is for Kingfisher, that flash of electric blue you sometimes catch skimming low over the water at Suffolk Wildlife Trust Carlton and Whirlingham Nature Reserves. In an earlier episode, we chatted to the Trust's Senior Wilder Communities Officer, Vicky Isles, who explained how spending time in nature can really lift your mood.
It shows the importance of having a personal interaction with wildlife. You know, maybe a kingfisher lands close to you and you get to observe it just doing its own thing. There's a real magic in that moment. Yeah, it changes your day to have those little moments. To come to nature reserves and see that, it is for everybody.
L is for Loke. That's Fairhead Loke, where Stephen Hughes grew up in the 70s and 80s on the family farm. He now lives in a house built next door to his parents' homestead and has found a unique way of celebrating where he is from.
More recently, I quite often go take a photo of the field from about the same position of just how it kind of alters. And that's the bit I like, just watching everything coming up and growing. And then as we go into the summer, but it seems that I preferred that more so when I was a kid, probably because it meant open fields, bales of straw, being able to kind of roam around.
M is for marshes, Carlton Marshes, what David Attenborough called a precious corner of East Anglia. Throughout the centuries, the marshes have fed livestock, inspired artists, welcomed walkers, and given locals somewhere to escape for an hour or two. Today, they're among East Anglia's finest nature reserves, and seems a good place to end the first half of our A to Z. See you at the Dutch Tea Gardens.